welcome everyone. This is quite a unique group, and we're here most importantly to really focus on the innovations of what Data Plus will do for you in the area of accounts payable management, specifically digital invoice capture, accounts payable AI innovation, integrated online buying, and purchase to pay management innovations. And with that said, I'd like to bring forward Bruce Bensettler, our founder and CEO, and he'll give you a little bit of brief on the accomplishments we've had in 2023 and where we're going for 2024. So Bruce, would you like to make a few comments, please?
Sure, Nick. Let me kind of put this in the context of our journey as we re-engineer our user interface, going to a pure web-based product. We're a couple of years into that. We have another year or so to go, but we have now several applications that are pure web-based that are deployed and being used by customers. And we will be completing the transition from a .NET framework to a JavaScript framework running as a pure web application. So that's what people are looking for these days, and that's a journey we've been on, and we're making really good headway with that. The feedback we're getting from customers is they really like the look and feel, the modern look and feel. Basically the user experience is really a positive one. So that's we're very excited about that. Part of that also, in addition to the DP Supply application, is our DP Pay, which is embedding the Edenred payment process into Data Plus accounts payable. So from a single screen, you can then pay vendors via ACH, check, or virtual credit card, and save thousands of dollars by not having to mail checks or pay for check stock or any of that sort of thing, plus the avoiding the issues of fraud, check fraud, which are major issues today. So a lot of exciting new things coming as we continue to innovate and move the product forward. The only other thing I wanted to mention is there are three different approaches that one can take to developing software that is very complex and involves many different applications and functions. One is a complete product, which includes all of the applications and all the software in one code base. We tried doing that. We found that we, as well as many others who have tried to do it, just couldn't keep up with the rate of development of applications and what users want. In the hospitality industry today, applications are still basically chosen at the departmental level. Everybody wants best in breed, and to try and create that in one single code base, one particular application, we think is really impossible. We tried it. We couldn't keep up with all of the changes in the technology, operating systems, languages, as well as all the other things that people were expecting from an application. The other is to try and interface with a lot of different products. We do that now, and we've been successful with that. The third approach, which is the hybrid approach, which is what we have here, which is embedding other application technology into the Data Plus system so that using APIs and webhooks, the data moves seamlessly between the applications. So in our view, we want to be the single throat to choke, so to speak. So in all these situations, we install the software, we support the software, we're responsible for the software, but not 100% of everything that you see was actually written by Data Plus, but it's all fully integrated in with Data Plus so that you're actually running one complete hybrid application. So we believe that that's the best approach, and having been at this since 1986, we've tried everything, and this really seems to be the best solution. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Nick. And
all right, wonderful. Thank you very much. So with that said, I'll be introducing other team members, and of course, the most important one today is Eric Shetty, who's our senior project manager, and he will be conducting the demonstration, as well as having Annabelle Sim, our Vice President of Sales with Complete, on standby for any of the additional features and questions that come up in the discussion. Important note, we've kept everybody on mute, and there is a chat box. There's a little button on there that at the top which says Q&A. So as we move along, please put your questions by clicking on the Q&A button, and it'll reveal your ability to ask a question in the chat box. And then after the demonstration, we'll review all of the various questions. The seminar will be recorded, and we'll get that out to you. And then also, Eric is going to be focusing on some of the more the management level side of the accounts payable features. So we do want to let you know that if you would like a personalized hands-on demo, we'll be able to schedule that for you as we move along after the webinar. Um, Eric has decided that he wanted to focus on all of the likes that we have received that he has received from the client installations to date. So he will be focusing on the key points that he wanted to highlight relating to user setup simplifications, invoice processing, and the ease of the integrated workflow. This is a starting point to an ending point concept, and we're looking forward to taking you through this scenario. Let's see if I've covered everything else. I think that is it. And what we'll do is, Eric, I'll be turning this over to you. I'll stop sharing my screen, and then you could commence forward with the demonstration.
Great, thank you, Nick. So I'm sharing my screen now, and I'm logged into our DP supply system here, and I'm on the main menu. And I want to mention several things here is that the system is browser based and accessible by computers, tablets, and cell phones. And there's different types of users within the system. For example, there's users that can create purchase requisitions. There's users who can do the purchase approval of the purchase orders. We have AP operator type users, and there's admin and configuration type users. And depending on how your user is set up, will give you access to these different tiles that we have on the screen here. And I also want to mention that for multi-property installations, here's an example of, I'm logged into my Data Plus demo system here, and this is a second property that we have set up here. So your properties would be listed here, and you can easily toggle between the properties there. And then I also want to mention the email address here. This is the Capture My Bills email address, and every property will get its own Capture My Bills email address. So this is where you'll direct vendors to send their invoices to go through the AI process. In the Capture engine, it'll process invoices in any format, including PDF, Word, Excel, or paper scan documents, and it'll extract the header and line item details to create an invoice transaction. If you already have a centralized email address where your accounts payable invoices are being sent to, you can set up auto forwarding rules that'll auto forward to your Capture My Bill email address. And the next thing I want to mention are these tiles down here. So these are for the punch out vendors, and I have 5 of them set up in my demo database, but you can have a lot more. We're not limited to just this 5, but this is just what I have in my demo database. So I wanted to start off to go through the process here. So for example, if I go into my Amazon business punch out vendor, like that would bring me to the Amazon page where I could go ahead and I could create a purchase requisition. I'd basically just be selecting the items that I want to add to my cart, and then Once I add to the cart, I could submit the order for approval. And what that would do is it would make a purchase requisition. So for example, here's my requisition that I have. And I did this order through Amazon, and it once I finish placing the order through Amazon, it assigns a requisition number in our DP supply system. It fills out the header information up here, and then it fills out the line item information down here. And what's left here are the GL accounts. So I'm going to fill in the GL accounts here. And I can choose to assign that to all the line items, or if I need to change an account number here, I can. And the other thing I need to do is assign a tax code. So I'll choose my tax code here. And I'll assign it across all the line items. And now I'm going to save that. And now I can submit it to my workflow. So in this case, I'm going to send it to my engineering workflow. And that would send off a notification to the approver to say, there's a requisition out there waiting for you to approve. And there's different system trays on this screen here for the requisitioning and purchase order process. So this shows like any requisitions that have been saved and any that are submitted for approval. These are awaiting approval, and these are approved and receipted and so on. So I'm going to go into the awaiting approval, and I can see my requisition is here. And if everything looks good, I can simply just approve it. But let's take a look here. There's documents and timeline. So I can see that the requisition was created. It records the date and time of when it was created, and the next person in the approval workflow. So it's recording all of this information in the system. And there's other things you can do too. If I want to add additional notes or add any attachments, I can do that at this point. So I'm going to approve the purchase order. And now that it's approved, that would send an email back to the requisitioner to let them know that the order has been approved. So once it's been approved, I can go into the approval system tray, and I can find my order here. And now this part of it is now when the delivery comes in. So I can see that here's my order. And once the delivery comes in, I can choose to receive everything in. And I'm going to click on the receipt button here. And if anything changed with as the delivery came in, like for example, if the quantity, if you got a partial shipment or something like that, you could change the quantity, or the unit cost could be changed, or if something changed with the shipping could be changed there. Otherwise, I'm just going to receive in the order. So now that order has been received in. And now the next process is that the invoice would come in. And so I'm going to replicate that here. So in the normal process, the invoice would get sent to the Capture My Bill email address, and then it would come into the system. But I'm going to replicate that here by going into my demo invoice generator. And I'm just going to put in my purchase order number and generate the invoice this way. And you can see the purchase order number is on the invoice. So in this case, when the invoice comes in, it will automatically match to the purchase order if the purchase order number is on the invoice. If it's not on the invoice, you'll have the ability to go in and match it up to the purchase order. So I'm going to process this. So now I'm going to play the role of the accounts payable operator. So let's say now that invoice went through the capture process, And when I go into manage invoices, it's going to, in here, we have different system trays. So this is anything in the unprocessed came through the AI capture process. So it's an invoice that doesn't have a final approval yet. And these are invoices that have been submitted in awaiting approval, approved, denied, and so on. So in here, I'm going to look for my order, which I have. The invoice came in for this one. And actually, before I get into that, I just want to point out one other thing here is that I can see the matching status. So if I click on the status here, I can see that the purchase order number, it matched the invoice, so it automatically matched it. And there are some that if something doesn't have that auto match feature, then what you can do is you have the record of the invoice here, and you can do the find a PO, and you can look for the purchase order and match it to the invoice from here. So that's for the ones that the invoices that come in that may not have the PO number assigned to it. So we have a way for you to manually match it this way. So I'm just going to now go into the invoice transaction. And the AI process, it went through what we call a capture process, and it created the header record up here automatically, and it also created the line item record here, and it pulled in the GL account because it knew that from the purchase order that was there. So I could simply like just submit this for approval. But I actually see that there's something here that needs to be done, which is I need to assign a posting period at this point. So I can go in and I can edit the invoice. And what I really like about this as like as an invoice operator is that it lists the invoice on the left side, and on the right side is where you can do any editing. And it has a header record. There's a line item record. So every line will have a line item record, and I can see it's the header record that's in red. So I know I need to do something with that header record there, that there's something needed here. And if I scroll down, I can see, okay, I need to assign the posting period. So I'm going to go in and select the posting period. And this is the month and year that the invoice will post into our Data Plus system, into the accounts payable side. And the other thing that I like is having the image here. There's no like attaching of the image, or you don't have to browse and search for it or put it through a scanner or something like that. This transaction, once I send it for approval and it gets approved, it's automatically going to show up in the accounts payable system. So I'll save this. And let's just take a quick look at some of the other actions here that, if I need to add notes or add further attachments or review the matching information, or if I want to look at the order timeline, I can quickly see that. And this is on the accounts payable side. So I'll be able to see, when the original requisition was done and the flow of the order there. I'll also be able to see, and I can look at the order details also from the accounts payable side. So here's a record of the requisition and the purchase order lines, and I can go down here and I can also see that the matching status here. So now that I have the post month and year that I want the invoice to be posted into, I'm going to submit it into my workflow because I have a workflow set up for my invoices. And I'm submitting it to my accounts payable workflow, and then it just rolls on to the next invoice. So you can keep on hammering away at getting these invoices, assigning the post month and year and sending them off for approval there. So if I go back into my manage invoice section, I can see what's awaiting for me to approve. So now I'm going to play the role of the approver there. So I'm going to go into my awaiting approval. And I can see, okay, here's my order that I have in the invoice that's associated with it. And if everything looks good, and I can approve it. And again, I can look at the documents and timeline and so on. So I'll just go ahead and I'll approve this. And now that it's approved, it's going to show up automatically in the Data Plus accounts payable system here. So I'm logged in and I'm going to go into my transaction history inquiry. And now I can see here's my invoice. It's posted in accounts payable, and it also includes the documents that were attached to it. So we have these documents attached in the accounts payable system, and this will post through to general ledger. It's already posted into accounts payable and general ledger, just like any other invoice would be posted there. And I didn't have to scan anything or browse or search for an attachment or anything like that. So that's the process from start to finish. But before I turn it back over to Nick and we get into the Q&A session here, there's a couple more points that I want to mention. And one of them is that if you don't have, or I'll say for vendors that are less commonly used, you may not have a punch out vendor for them. And you can just simply create a purchase order by going into here. You can manually create a purchase order, and then you'd fill out the header and line item records, and you can add your items onto it. The other thing you can do that I really like is that you can copy a purchase order. So once you have a purchase order entered into the system, you can easily copy it. You could edit any one of these line items or change the quantities or the amounts or things like that. So it's easy to edit any kind of uh, purchase order and easy to copy it. And I want to talk a little bit about the configuration here. So things are really easy to configure. For example, users. If you need to set up users for like an onboarding process, we have a way that you can do a bulk import from a spreadsheet. So it's easy to, if you have a large group of users, to add in. We also, I mean, you can set up users individually too, but we also have, if somebody goes on vacation and they're part of an approval workflow, we have what we call a nominee here, where you can sign another person to fill your place while you're on vacation, and you'll automatically get those emails about the whether it's a requisition needing approval or an invoice approval. The nominee will get those emails and will have access to the approving process in place of the person that's away or on vacation. I also want to mention too the workflow. So here's the workflow. You can have workflows for purchase orders, and you can have workflows for invoices. And here's an example of one that I have for a purchase order, and have it set up for the food and beverage department. And it's visible to these people here. So you can choose like who you want the workflow to be visible to. And it's really easy. If you need to add additional people into the workflow, it's easy to do. You can select them from here. And there's lots of different criteria for the workflow. If it's a dollar limit threshold, you can set a dollar limit, or you could set it if it's for a particular GL account, like a construction in progress or something, or some sort of capital expenditure, that can be routed to, a general manager or owner or somebody like that. If a certain GL account number is used, there's lots of different criteria that can be set up for workflows, and it's easy to navigate through. And then here's my personal favorite is the managed layouts. So this is for things like purchase orders. So you can set up a purchase order template. For example, I have one for the rooms department. And if I go into the settings group and I take a look at that, what I really like about this is that for this rooms department purchase order template, you can assign specific GL account numbers for this template, which means here I have my rooms department, and I'm selecting just the rooms department expense accounts. So in other words, like the people, you'd make them, you'd give them access. So the rooms department purchase order template would be visible to these people. And then when they go to create their purchase requisition, they only would have these accounts would be visible to them to select. So they don't have to go through the entire chart of accounts. they're just narrowed down to only their expense accounts in their department. So I really like that feature, and I find that it really helps narrow down preventing mistakes from people choosing similar accounts in another department. And one other thing I want to mention here too is with the notifications. And as I mentioned, you when a requisition or invoice gets sent for approval, an automatic email can be sent to the approver, and this is where you can turn that on or turn it off. So if I want to turn it on for purchase orders, and then if I also want to turn it on when the purchase order is approved, it can then send an email back to the original requisitioner. And same with invoices. If you want to have an invoice approval, that can be turned on to get the automatic emails. Or if it's something that's a little bit excessive with the emails, it's really easy to come and turn that off. So that's everything that I wanted to cover here today in the demonstration. And I'm going to turn it back over to Nick as we go through the Q&A session there.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Keep your screen active. Right now, we only have one question from Angie over at the Black Butte branch, and I think it's going to reflect on the customization of purchase orders. She's asking, do you have to use a purchase order?
Is that it's I don't quite understand the question fully, but I'm thinking maybe you're asking like, do you just need the invoicing function, the invoice AI process? And you
Yes.
you can use that process there, just the invoicing AI. And as users are set up, you don't, these tiles, if you're not going to be creating purchase orders and you don't want these tiles here, basically users wouldn't have access to this if you're just using the invoicing side there. So you'd still use the capture my bill email address here, and you'd have fewer tiles on the screen, but that can be done.
Yeah, Eric, the I think a lot of it has to do with the setup and the configuration of putting in using purchase orders as a procedure. Is that is the implementation a difficult task at all?
Not at all. Actually, it's I mean, we work closely with our customers to find out exactly what their needs are, and then getting the users, as I said, they can be uploaded in bulk. And if you have multiple properties, we can set them all up at one time. Or if you find that you have kind of like a pilot property that's going to be like an early adapter to this, we can work with one property at a time. And we kind of want to see what fits your needs there, and we'll go through the workflow process and set up, and then we have you send you'll have a capture my bill email address for each property, and we'll have you send some sample invoices there to test that out beforehand. And um and that and then we do training, and we're going to show everybody involved with in their roles, their specific roles, like what they need to do and how the system works. So it's I find it a very easy system to learn, and it can be implemented relatively quickly.
Yeah, it sounds to me if you do not have a purchase order system, especially when you have multiple departments, and I've not been at Black Butte, but I can imagine there's a huge number of different operating departments, and of course that's probably the first thing one says, "Oh my gosh, how am I going to handle the training on this?" So we are set up with a nice remote training program. Is that correct, Eric?
Yeah, it is. And we even have an invoice approval process. So even though if you don't use the purchase ordering side of it, there's you can use the invoicing side, and there's an approval process specifically for invoices. So you can set up a workflow for invoice approval.
And then once you set up that purchase order, does the matching come along with it, or does that have to be configured?
That's automatically in the system with the purchase order process. So that way, if you're creating a purchase order through the DP supply system, and it gets carried along all the way through the invoicing side, and you can still match it to any purchase order that's in the system.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful, especially if you're in a larger resort where all of the departments are all spread out and they're operating in their own little circle. So far, we only have one question. We can, of course, the attendees can follow up with Eric or myself if you have any additional questions. And once you see a recording of the system, as far as pricing, feel free to contact me. We customize the pricing based on number of users and your volume and activity. And I can assure you the pricing is well configured based on your consumption. And once we cover that element with you, you'll see a very short recovery period of cost savings.
And we're more than happy to do a one-on-one demo with anybody there. So we're glad to show people today, but we just want to more than happy to dive into more detail with this stuff.
Yeah. I would say, well, what you should do now is take a trip to the Bitter End Yacht Club and have yourself a margarita.
That is on my bucket list.
What a wonderful group of users. Any other questions while we're here? If not, we'll adjourn. Quiet. I guess that's it. Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. And again, feel free to communicate. And oh, by the way, we are coming out with a new website shortly, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, or at least prior to High Tech. And by the way, if either any of you are planning to attend High Tech, we'd love to see you. Touch base with me so we can set up a time to get together. The website's going to be exciting. We're going to be utilizing a lot of client-centric formulas, and I think on my wish list that I like to see on the website. And if you have any thoughts or comments, please send them over. But I'm hoping to see eventually, once the website is installed, that we have a client portal, but it's more of a user sharing portal where all of the every one of these properties are all unique. You're all unique operators, and to share experiences that have worked for you within the community of our user group, I think would be really wonderful. So feel free to, we welcome any ideas that you have as we start evolving with our new website. And with that said, unless there are any other questions, I think we'll adjourn.